What is up, gang? We are here. This is the first episode. This is Teeing It Up. I'm your host, Connor. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Vladimir. Vladimir, how are we doing? And welcome to the new show, bud.
Thank you. We're doing good. I just started a new job today, starting the new podcast tonight. So it's just been a very exciting time filled with a lot of change, a lot of new stuff, and just a lot of things or achievements that I can look forward to and hope to actually progress with something.
It's a Monday at first. How was your first day in the big boy world?
The first day in the big boy world was a little bit hectic, a lot of training videos, don't be a menace in the workforce, stuff like that.
Right.
Otherwise, we had a little bit of issues with like security clearances, so I couldn't really get to some like more technical stuff, but hopefully that'll be sorted for tomorrow and going forward.
Nice. Going off of my first big boy day a couple months ago, it's basically like a first day of school day. Like it's like you sit down, you say hi to everyone. Maybe they'll throw some busy work at you. We get your email set up. We get this set up. But it's like first day of school vibes almost.
Absolutely.
All right. So the reason we started this podcast is because we are very passionate about sports. We're double-digit handicaps, and we're here to, I like to think there's a lot of people in the 18 to 35 range that watch a lot of sports, that play a lot of golf, are double-digit handicaps, and can relate to a lot of the stuff that we're about to say. So that's why we started this podcast. It's a great time to do it. We have the NBA, NHL playoffs going on. Not much happening in the NFL right now, obviously. It's the off season, and then baseball going on as well. So a lot to get into today.
Yeah, so I guess to kind of provide a further outlook for what we plan on being able to do with this podcast, as Connor mentioned, we want to cover the big four sports in the United States. And then depending on where it goes, we would be open to many ideas depending on what people find interesting and what people are responsive to.
Right. No, I even put it in the notes for today that we're going to get into a little golf, which isn't necessarily a big four sport. It's a major week. It's one of the 4 weeks of the year where I actually watch golf, or at least I do. So we'll get into that. But you like to watch cars on Sundays, so maybe we'll get into the cars.
We'll see.
By cars, I mean F1. That's my nickname for something. Usually I give some kind of like asinine nickname for something that like I don't follow. But let's get into the sports. So starting off, we're going to cover the NHL. I'm going to be your quote unquote hockey expert. I don't consider myself an expert. I played JV hockey. I wasn't much of an expert on the ice, but hopefully I'll provide something that people will find somewhat of an expertise or somewhat of a recap, we'll say, for the hockey stuff. So we had an abundance of game sevens, which I'll get into. The NBA, Vladi, is the most ridiculous league. We had only two game sevens, and they were both just absolute. Like the Suns game last night, you could have just turned the channel off in the second quarter and been perfectly okay and lived your life very all right.
I'll get into it after the NHL stuff. I know what you're saying, but I do still think there was a lot that came from that, and it was an interesting time.
Yeah. Anyways, in a real league, there were five out of the 8 series were game sevens in the NHL. So I'm gonna start with probably the most talked about one because it's the most talked about team in this league. The Tampa Bay Lightning. Oh, I almost said the Tampa Bay Maple Leafs. That would have been bad. The Tampa Bay Lightning beat the Toronto Maple Leafs in Game 7 Saturday night by a score of 2-1. Moving on to the second round. Obviously, Toronto is Canada's team. They're a huge market. They've invested a lot of money into this team. Obviously, Tampa Bay is the back-to-back champion, so to get them in the first round is a bit of bad luck. But that's the way it goes. They have 3 guys. The main point I make is they have 3 guys that make over 10 million. There is not a single team in the league that has more than one. In fact, there's like maybe 10 to 12 guys that even make 10 plus million. So if you want to do the math, they have 3 guys that make a third of their salary of the salary cap. They have 5 guys that make 60% of the salary cap, and that they have 5 guys making, I think Willie Nylander is the least of that 5. I think he makes about 6.9 million. So obviously when you have 5 guys, it's 5 of the 23 guys on an active roster on a day that make over half the salary cap. It's hard to find depth. Young guru GM Kyle Dubas has felt like he's done that, but what an absolute clowning. I mean, we can get into teams that we hate. I hate the Maple Leafs with a burning. You can see my hands going. They think they're all this. The last time most of their fans won a playoff series, they were in diapers, those fans. They haven't won a playoff series since 2004. You know what's happened since 2004, buddy? The iPhone. America had its first black president. Osama bin Laden was killed. What else has happened? I graduated high school. I graduated college. One Direction came and went. I graduated middle school. I graduated elementary school since then. Kindergarten since then.
That's a long dry spell for the Maple Leafs. And I'm not the biggest hockey guy. However, I can join you in I hate the Toronto crowd. I hate the fans. The players kind of come off as snobbish, morons, losers. Not a team that we like. We do not vibe with the Toronto.
Marner is an absolute clown. Yeah, you get into their players. Mitch Marner's an absolute clown. The guy makes $10 million in a game 7. Can't even put up a point. I mean, I don't know what you can look for depth. You could try. They've tried goaltending. They tried getting more physical. They've tried adding depth. And nothing works. It's when your superstars make $10 million, don't get done in game 7. I don't know what to say. Maybe they're not superstars. So I'll leave it at that because we've got a lot of games to get into. We want to try and go at somewhat of a pace here. But that was Tampa Bay. They'll move on and they'll play the Florida Panthers, who defeated the Washington Capitals in game 6 Friday night. The next one actually was before the Toronto-Tampa game. Was Carolina. I wrote Carolina beats Carolina. Carolina beat Boston, the Boston Bruins, 3-2. This game, was the pace was controlled by Carolina the whole night. The home team won the home team won every game of the series. So home ice mattered in that case. Carolina, basically the difference was that was not a big, bad Bruins physical team that we've seen in the past. They were kind of controlled by the first and second line and really didn't get much depth scoring. And Carolina did. That Stahl line, their third line, played the perfection line in Pasternak, Marchand, and Patrice Bergeron super well. Max Domi, who's a fourth line player, had 2 goals. So that's what teams do in the NHL playoffs that win Stanley Cups is when they get depth scoring in big spots. That's when teams typically win, and that's what happened there. So basically the big storyline, Jacob Slavin, I wrote this down. If you haven't watched Jacob Slavin play, I know you probably have no idea who the heck that is. But he is an absolute stud defenseman for Carolina. Carolina's kind of notorious for not really having any. I mean, they have Svechnikov and Svechnikov, but they don't really have any true superstar Austin Matthews players. They're just super deep and super hard to play against defensively. So they're going to play the Rangers in the second round, which we'll get into the Rangers because that was another game 7. The next one.
Before we move on, can I add one thing? So this was the one NHL game this weekend I watched. And I noticed Boston, it seemed to appear that they were playing a lot kind of sloppy. It seemed like they were always going a man down, giving up stupid penalties. And when you do that, I don't believe Carolina scored on the power play, but when you do something like that, you let the crowd get into it. You're giving the players more juice. It almost seems like they're skating half a step faster. Every pass is half a step sharper. And it's almost like you're playing with tilted ice. And so I kind of noticed that Boston did themselves no favors playing away from home, and at the end it kind of cost them.
Right. No, not only even if the team doesn't score on a power play, if you're on the penalty kill, I mean, it's shorthanded goals happen, but generally speaking, you're not scoring either.
You're chasing.
That's 2 minutes you're not scoring, even if you're not giving up a goal. So you're definitely right about that. Moving on, we had the Edmonton Oilers, aka McJesus and company, beat the Los Angeles Kings 2-0. Pretty boring game. It was late. I stayed up for it Saturday night. I had a couple buds over. We watched the game. Shot the crap. I mean, it was 2-0. Mike Smith, at 40 years old, getting it done, shut out in game 7. He's criticized a lot because he's frankly not that good. But he did good in game 7, and McDavid put it away late with the second goal. I mean, this LA team without Drew Doughty, who's another stud defenseman, isn't even a playoff team in my opinion. So like Edmonton is really not deep enough to have any kind of a run, in my opinion. They'll play Calgary in the second round. That is a huge rivalry. It's the Battle of Alberta. They're like both in the same province.
Okay.
So that's one of the biggest rivalries in hockey, like the last few years. So that should be a lot of fun. The next one, the New York Rangers, my team, besides our Detroit teams, beat the Pittsburgh Crybaby Crosby Penguins 4-3 in overtime. I will say Crosby came back from a concussion for Game 7. Tristan Jarry came back. He hadn't played in the series. He looked pedestrian at best, to be honest. Also, Ryan McCall came back. He's a second-line center for them that plays a lot of minutes for them. So they got a lot of guys to come back for Game 7. Ultimately, they wasn't enough. Really, like Malkin, chipped in here and there, but really was that first line. Specifically, Jake Gensel and Sidney Crosby were all of their offense. I think Gensel had 8 goals in 7 games. The Rangers' top 2 lines, who earlier in this series were not really doing much, came and they scored, I believe. Panarin had the game winner. Kreider had one. Zibanejad had a snipe. So like their big dogs that make the big money came out to play in the lights at MSG in the Big Apple. I don't really think, they had the best goalie in the league in the regular season. He was just okay in that series. I don't love their defensive core defensively. I think Fox does a great job offensively. Trouba hits a lot of guys, but overall, I think, I don't know. I just don't think they're going to go that far. They're going to play Carolina. The real storyline quickly, I know we got a lot of games to talk about, is so Chris Letang and Evgeny Malkin, who have been free agent, or those two along with Crosby have played together for the last 15 years. They have 3 cups together. They're all 3 are Hall of Famers. Malkin is going to be 37 and Letang's going to be 35, I think, and they're both going to be unrestricted free agents this summer. So that was kind of their last chance. Like I doubt they signed both of them, because the problem is they're still contributing enough to where you would have to pay them a decent amount, but at what cost to your future, basically. So there's a lot of question marks going into the offseason. There's what I'm getting at. The next game was Calgary beating the Dallas Stars 3-2 in overtime. Dallas, aside from that first line with Pavelski and Jason Robertson, who's going to get that payday, they did not have any scoring from any of their lines besides that first line. The Calgary top line scored 2 of the 3. They were pretty quiet all series, pretty low scoring series, which is odd because this playoff has been notorious for I want to say the overs hitting 67% of the time, 2 out of 3 games. I think the overs hit maybe once in that series. Jake Ottinger, a BU kid, he had 64 saves, which is unbelievable. He had 50 in regulation. That's insane. To put that in perspective, to get above 35 shots is considered a lot. And he had 50 in regulation and 64 for the game, and then they lost. So, like I said, they'll play Edmonton. So that's it as far as hockey goes. Do you have anything you want to pipe in on the hockey front?
I was actually gonna more kind of give an open-ended question. I did see a lot of people almost kind of complaining about the way the NHL playoffs are set up. Would you be in favor of going back to traditional 1-8, 2-7, 3-6, 4-5? And then I guess why would you? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, no, I definitely would. I think so. I know I explained it to you the other day. It was you I explained it to the other day. So it's stupid. There's 2 divisions in each conference, and the 1 seed play, and there's 2 wild cards per conference. And so each winning division plays the wild card, and the 2 and 3 in each division play each other in their own division. And then whoever wins the 1 wild card in this bracket moves on, plays the 2 and 3, so you stay in your conference. Unless you're a wild card, then you if you're a wild card in the other division, and let's say you're in the Metropolitan, and then you have to play in the whatever the other one is, Atlantic, I think. Then you have to go into that, and then you stay in that. You don't go back to the Metropolitan. So it's just a mess. I'm probably confused and lost everyone that's listening just by trying to describe that, which is if you're the NHL, like that's exactly what you don't want. Why don't I get what they're doing because they had to go back to a somewhat normal schedule. Like this is almost a transition year from having the shortened COVID season with the weird COVID divisions. But they hockey is notorious for like they change it like every 7 to 8 years. Like it's changed multiple times in our lifetime how they did that. I don't get. I personally think the 1 through 8 works in every sport. I know baseball doesn't do that because they have less teams, and it makes sense. What they do makes sense for baseball. But yes, I would do the 1 through 8 just because it's easier to understand, it's easier to follow. I think the easier you can make anything in general in a non-popular or niche, so to speak, sport, the more people are going to end up paying attention. It makes sense. I just think it's more eyes, the more the people that can follow.
I agree. The easier you make something to follow for somebody, the more likely they are to actually follow it, as opposed to sending on a treasure hunt just to watch one game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's transition into the NBA. We had 2 game 7s this weekend. They were both Sunday. So starting off, I didn't write the scores down, but the Suns got absolutely stomped by the Mavericks in the nightcap. It was 57-27 at the half. Chris Paul had 1 point in the first half. Luka continued to do his thing. The Mavs will move on and play the Warriors in the conference final. Thoughts on that game?
So I'll kind of start with, like, I'm kind of looking down at what I wrote, just kind of prepare. First of all, Luka Doncic, oh my God. This man was pulling up from 35 feet like he was Steph Curry, and after every swish, he was turning around, looking at the celebrities in the first row of Phoenix and just laughing at them. He is incredible. It's an absolute phenomenon. That's something everybody wishes they had on their team, and oh my. Also, the other thing is, I think he got a lot of help from Spencer Dinwiddie there that made it easier. He got to take some possessions off, stay a little bit fresher for later in the game. The 3-point shot, when you compare when you look at the way the two teams shot, one team could make a 3-pointer, the other one could not. I mean, that's on the Mavs side. I guess the other thing I'd say is Jalen Brunson continued his incredible season. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent this year. Troy Weaver, you should call his agent. Maybe look at bringing him to Detroit. Maybe a pretty fun Piston. Other than that, I do want to transition to the Suns because I think there's a lot more interesting stuff to talk about that and an absolute implosion. I think this might be just like the end of this core of Suns. So Devin Booker.
So?
Well, I'll get into it. So Devin Booker picked the worst time to get into or to play his worst career game ever. Chris Paul looked every bit of the 37 or 38 that he turned a couple days ago. And people don't know if it was healthy, whatever it was. He doesn't look like someone that it's tough to sit there and continue to say he's your everyday point guard. And then the best one was DeAndre Ayton was reportedly refused to go back into the game. So I looked at the box score. He played 17 minutes, and there were reports that Monty Williams said go into the game. He said no. And if that's the case, if that's the case, how does DeAndre Ayton come back to Phoenix? How do you tell the coach of the year, no, I'm good here on the bench while we're down by 25, 30? So I think this is kind of maybe DeAndre Ayton a sign and trade. I don't think you can bring him back. Chris Paul, I don't know how his contract situation is, but if you got to pay him $40 million to be 38 years old, that's tough. You kind of knew what you got for when you signed the contract. You signed it for the first 2 years, maybe not the last 2. Didn't work out. I mean, kudos to Phoenix for trying, but I think with this group of players, this is the end of their window.
That's unfortunate too, because they made the finals last year, and really like they had a chance to win it. To be honest, like they could have beaten the Bucks, and then going into this year to just lose, obviously that's a disappointing season. I actually, the Chris Paul thing is interesting because I don't definitely necessarily think that he was necessarily a failure. I thought he had a bad game. I mean, he had an absolute he had one point at the half. That's ridiculous. And you talk about the stupid NBA league. We got players who don't even play in playoff games. We got guys who refuse to fulfill the contracts, like the duty they have in their contracts in a playoff atmosphere. Like the script writes itself in the NBA sometimes.
It does. Let's go on to the other game 7, which was Boston and the Bucks, which honestly, just like the second half of that game, full on anticlimax. Once again, the 3-point shooting, I think I looked at it. Boston shot 55 3-pointers. I think they scored 22, 23, 24 of them. Pretty good percentage, whereas the Bucks couldn't hit water out of a boat. They might have been 3 for 50. I don't know what the numbers were, but it was not good. Usually there's the phrase, the best player will always win game 7. Giannis was the best player in that series, but he got absolutely no help from anyone. It didn't help that Chris Middleton was dead. Milwaukee couldn't, like I said, they couldn't make a jump shot, and you can't make a jump shot. The Boston defense could condense. That makes it tougher for Giannis to get to the rim and get his free points with the layup. Can't bully everyone if you got to go through 4 bodies as opposed to 1. I think Boston was immense. Grant Williams is an absolute sharpshooter. I don't understand the Milwaukee technique of let's just sag off shooters and let them just pull up from the 3-point line uncontested. But I think a lot of this series would have been completely different if Chris Middleton was playing, and some of those George Hill, Grayson Allen garbage time minutes were being played by a player who can drop 25, 30 points on any given night.
Nightly, yeah. The only thing I wanted to add on was the I can't speak. It's a Monday. Grant Williams tied an NBA record with 7 threes in a game 7. That's tied for the most all time. And like you said, most of those were open shots. Like he was just popping threes, making it rain, as they say. And like it wasn't like he's just hitting these like Steph Curry from half court shots. He was relatively open for pretty much all of them. So they'll go on and they'll play the Heat. So that's all we got for basketball. We quickly want to get into before we go. Talk about the PGA real quick. It's in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Tiger Woods seen today playing a practice round. Every implication is saying he's playing. He is currently at 70-1 to win the tournament. He was at 65-1 to win the Masters when it first started on Monday. So a little less odds. I think it's because we saw how bad the leg is. But Joey LaCava, his caddy, has noted that the endurance is significantly better. I feel like he has to say that at the end of the day. It may be better, but he does have to kind of say that to build a storyline here. The odds-on favorite is Scotty Scheffler at, I believe, 11-1, followed by Justin Thomas and Rory McIlroy at 14-1. Sorry. John Rahm is 12-1, and then the other two are 14-1. Any thoughts wrapping up with golf?
I guess I'll just kind of give my pick for who I think not necessarily will win because it's a golf tournament. It's really hard to. It's rarely ever someone so dominant that you can just say he will win this. But I think Rory McIlroy has had such a long major drought that eventually it's that law of averages where I think this is the one where he turns around, plays 4 days of good golf, and I think Rory McIlroy can come ahead and win the PGA.
I'm going to take John Rahm. He's had a relatively pedestrian year. He's lost his number 1 spot in the world. I read an article that this is a good course to play for him. I haven't really looked at the course, to be honest. He hits as far as game plays anywhere. I think he comes back. He's one of those guys. He's like a tiger. He gets mad when he gets mad. Look out! Like he has that thing in his head that goes off. So I'm going to pick him this weekend.
Okay.
So we're going to give you guys some more segments as the week goes on. We'll probably hop on here sometimes and just record us, chatting and doing silly stuff. We're going to try and record on Mondays and get the actual podcast out Tuesdays. Like I said, maybe we'll do some segmented stuff over the week. Tweet us at Teeing It Up with C&V. If you want to see something, comment, like, subscribe. We really appreciate it. We're trying to get this going. We're really passionate about this kind of stuff. I mean, it may not come out in our first episode. We're just kind of getting some cobwebs off. But if you just let us, give us some time here, we'll give you some content. That's going to be the deal here. So, Vladi, anything you want to say?
I just want to say, I think it was a good first episode. I want to thank everyone for kind of tuning in, listening, seeing us kind of give our opinions on what we think is going on in the world of sports. And kind of, as you said, Connor, I hope to make this something that's a little bit more kind of like, let's say, community driven, where if you're out there and you want us to talk about a certain topic, throw it in the comments, tweet at us, let us know what you want us to talk about, and we'll see what we can do.
Right. It doesn't even have to be sports too. It can be anything.
Yep.
So yeah, so we're gonna leave it here. Till next time we tee it up, shoot them straight, boys.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.